I'm about to start the meeting. We'll go through the normal process, apologies, minutes, etc. We've got a number of members of the public who've come to ask some questions, and you'll be taken in turn and you'll be invited up to ask your question. So the first thing I have to do is to deal with apologies, and we've got an apology from Councillor Duncan Wood, who's tested positive for COVID, and very understandably is sort of keeping that to himself at home. So if we record those apologies, I'll then move on to the minutes of the 5th of September. And there is an alteration to the minutes with a contribution made on the net zero when Councillor Moore said that it needs to amend to read, the council need to learn from the government's experience in court in its approach to policy and strategy for advertising net zero in the city. Of course, that is what you said. Whether or not that's what you said, I accept what you said, and so forth. We will amend the minutes accordingly. Okay, so we're in agreement that I sign the minutes as amended. Thank you, Councillor Fole. So I'll then move on to declarations of interest. If anybody has any declarations of interest in accordance with the Code of Conduct, please advise us, and you know that you step outside the room for that item. Item 4 is the local government part 2. There are no part 2 items, so that motion will not be moved at any stage. We now move into the part of the agenda where we have public questions. We've got 4 public questions this evening, and I will invite, in order in a moment, members of the public to come up to the table, wrestle with the speaker, and then give your question, of which you will be given a response, and then you will be asked for a supplementary, if you want to ask a supplementary or point of clarification with regard to the answer that you were given, but it has to be based upon that answer. But just to say, you will receive answers to the question. They are basically all relating to item 16, which we won't be dealing with until item 16, of course. And they are largely around the traffic-related issues. And we need to make it clear that Exeter City Council is neither the Transport Authority nor the Highway Authority. The purpose of the report is to comply with our legal duty to monitor air pollution, identify any failures of the legal objectives, and implement our air quality action plan. That is what we do with that plan, but you've asked some questions. And so in the first instance, I'd like to ask Mr. Neil Martin to come forward. Neil, and get yourself comfortable, and then please, when you're ready, ask your question.
Well, the original one. Okay. I've suffered with asthma for 20 years and over. Now I and others struggle to walk by Pinho and Pozo roads amongst the new ones. What are the current pollution level measurements since the trial started in August 23? And under the 2010 Equality Act, decision makers at ECC are required to consider and take account of disabilities like asthma. Will ECC agree that pollution is rising on these arterial roads?
Thank you, Neil. If you just turn off your microphone, and just first of all, just to say, fully understand, and not that it's a competition. There's several of us who are asthma sufferers. I've been an asthma sufferer for over 40 years, so I fully understand your situation. So I'm going to ask Councillor Fole to give the answer to this question, as it's Councillor Fole's portfolio. Councillor Fole.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Martin. The data presented in the report does not show that pollution levels are rising on roads in Exeter. There have been significant reductions over the period covered by this report. I think that is with the exception of the heavy tree area, which is only very slightly down. Data from 2023 will be presented in the next annual status report, which will be published in 2024. Presenting annual data in this form is the Council's legal duty under the Environment Act of 1990.
Thank you, Councillor Fole. Mart and Neil, do you want to ask a supplementary based upon his answer?
Yes, I do. So do you agree with me that the current timescales are far too long between the readings and the publishing of pollution levels? So, for example, this report goes back to January 2022, and you're discussing publishing them in October, which is a ridiculous 21 months behind.
Okay.
So, sorry,
Well,
just
Neil,
a second.
you're asking different questions here, but I'm going to give you a little bit of latitude. Go on.
Only because Bob gave the answer about how often they were reporting it.
Come on.
So so that was that bit. And so now, because of my asthma, will the Heaventry Active Streets project increases pollution and therefore the frequency of my asthma attacks and incur new breaches of nitrogen dioxide in 2023 and 2024? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. First of all, I think some about the timescales, some of the answers will be given to about timescales further on with some of the questions being asked by other members of the public. So that will be covered in the moment. As for, we are not medical experts and doctors. I don't know when we will. I know when I'm going to suffer an attack or whatever, I can manage that. I don't know. And that data is not readily available for us. So I understand and appreciate. I think Simon Lane, who will be making the air quality report on item 16, will most probably go into detail. Sadly, the procedures are that we are not, I'm trying to help you, we are not debating this issue as such now. It is pure question and answer, and that's it, I'm afraid. So, thank you, Neil. That's how I think we need to deal with it. And so, thank you for asking the question. It will appear in the minutes, okay? And I feel sure those supplementaries you were asking will be dealt with some of the answers that you get given or you can hear presently.
Great, thank you all.
Okay. Thank you for that, Neil. Now, on question 2, I'd like to invite Alan Quanavir to come forward. And when you're ready, Alan, if you'd like to give us your question.
Thank you. Chair, given that increased traffic congestion has the potential to increase pollutant emissions and degrade air quality, particularly near main arterial routes, please confirm if Exeter City Council intends to install any additional air quality monitoring equipment so that the full impact of the Heaventry and Whitton experimental traffic regulation order can be established and assessed.
Right, thank you, Alan. And again, I'm going to ask Councillor Fole, portfolio holder, to give you your answer. Councillor Fole.
Good evening, Alan. I think it's important to be clear at the beginning that Exeter City Council is neither the Transport Authority nor the Highway Authority. And so the purpose of this report is to comply with our legal duty to monitor air quality. At the moment, we have no plans to install additional air quality monitoring equipment for the purpose of assessing the impact of the scheme. The current monitoring network will allow the council to perform that statutory function, which is to monitor and to report on compliance with the air quality objectives. However, the City Council has recently started a separate project to explore whether new methods can be used to better understand and present the air pollution levels, particularly along the Heaventry corridor. A summary of this project is included with the report to members. This project will include the installation of some additional monitoring equipment along the corridor from Livery Dole to Sweetbriar Lane. And data from these will be made available to Devon County Council to use in their appraisal of the scheme.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fole. Alan, a supplementary based upon his answer, Alan.
Sorry. You quite rightly mentioned that you're not Transport Authority or Highway Authority, but obviously you have obligations, and so does Devon County Council with regards to consulting with your authority in respect of the air quality report, My supplementary in question is, what inquiries have been made by Devon County Council or its agents in respect of the adequacy of the air quality monitoring equipment for the Heavitree and Whitton active street trial, both before and after implementation, and on what dates? Now, I appreciate, obviously, you won't be able to answer all that here and now, but I would appreciate
Right,
answering the
Alan.
question.
What we're going to do with that, because that's quite detailed, we won't be able to answer that this evening. It's a fair supplementary, a little bit of latitude, but I'll allow it. What we intend to do, the meeting is recorded. We will get the answer down and we will get you an answer, and that answer will be appended to the minutes so it becomes part of the official paper trail of this meeting. Okay? You've asked some detailed questions there. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, but you'll go through the transcript. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to call forward now Mr. Ian Frankham to ask your question. And again, Ian, in your time, when you're ready, if you would like to answer your question, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. Okay, the report the executive group are discussing is historic data from 21 months ago, i.e. from January 2022 up to 9 months ago. Therefore, are you aware that the City Council decisions you make are using potentially inaccurate or out-of-date figures? Would this executive agree that data should be reported more frequently? Finally, will the Heavitree Active Street project increase pollution and incur new breaches of nitrogen dioxide in 2023-2024?
Thank you, Ian. And this is where I would just remind Neil, I think that was part of the supplementary you asked, Neil, and I think you'll get part of the answer given to you now. And again, I'm going to ask Councillor Fole to give the response to the question. Thank you.
Good evening, Ian. I think we would all like data to be available more readily. I think that straight without doubt. But the reporting frequency is that which is legally required of the Council under the Environment Act of 1990. And data is presented in the report in accordance with the relevant guidance from national government. Altering this to use data in ways that does not meet the guidance would reduce the reliability of that data. This report is not one which is seeking to make decisions, and rather the data is presented for members' information.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fold. Ian, based upon that answer, a supplementary.
Yeah, you started by saying that you would like information more readily. Therefore, would you accept that the effects of nitrogen dioxide levels above the target levels, particularly in the Heavitree corridor, will have on the health of those affected in that period? And that period is quite substantial, and you should do something now rather than wait 12 months for people's poor health.
Okay, again, that's a difficult question because there's opinion involved in all of that. Ian, all those factors are all taken into account. This report, if I can just help, this report is basically reflects a period that is gone, the air quality report. It's nothing to do. It is nothing really. It's not basing this on this scheme. It's not evidence that the scheme could or should rely on, because it is a bit. I feel sure they'll be collecting their own data, and I think one of the previous questions answered that. But again, we'll pick up some of the detail of that supplementary, and we will try to get back to you where we can on those specific issues, Ian, if you give us some time to think about that and to prepare a response. Is that okay?
Okay, Chair, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ian. And so now for the fourth question, I'd like to ask Lucy Hay to come along. Again, Lucy, in your time and when you're ready, would you ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Housing developments and recent road closures have increased demand on Pinhoe and Heavitree corridors. HGVs are being caught up with displaced residential traffic, causing more idling and emissions outside our homes and walking routes for our school children. You have a duty to protect the children and protected statuses from dangerous air quality. Please evidence how the council prepared for these publicised changes, and if not, why not?
Thank you, Lucy, for that question. And again, Councillor Fulf will give your response.
Good evening, Lucy. I think it's first to say that housing developments, which do have a potential to have a significant adverse effect on pollution levels, are required to undertake an air quality assessment as part of the planning process. The developer is required to demonstrate that no significant impact will result from the scheme or provide suitable mitigation. The changes to the road network in Heavytree, as we've already said, are not directly the City Council decisions. And whilst Exeter City Council were consulted, these were planned and implemented by the Highways Authority, which is Devon County Council. Questions about the planning of the scheme are therefore best directed to the County Council. We are, however, feeding in our air quality data to the officers at DCC, and we help them evaluate the impact of the changes. The City Council's legal duty is to monitor air pollution and to identify any failures of the legal objectives and to implement our air quality action plan. The data from monitoring during 2023 will be presented in 2024 in accordance with the legal timetables for doing so.
Thank you, Councillor Fulf. Lucy, would you like any clarification or a supplementary?
As a resident of East Swanford Hill, I've had a few brief conversations with politicians. One told me that my family didn't count because I had a hedge, and another told me it was an absolute priority. I guess what my extra question would be, how will you prove to my community on Heavytree Corridor that you understand that our health needs protecting? And please remember that Labour Party is proposing Ella's Law, which is a new clean air human rights bill in memory of the little girl whose death certificate was the first to state cause of death, air pollution. It's been 10 years since Ella died. Please step in before another year passes and do the right thing for my community that lives on East Swanford Hill and beyond.
Thank you, Lucy, for that supplementary. And it's a good, passionate statement, which we appreciate. I'll take a transcribe of it and I'll see if we need to get back to you. Rest assured, whatever laws are passed, and hopefully the Labour Party will be in a position to be able to pass these and many other things for the benefit of people of our country, we will implement those laws and what are required of us on each and every time. I can assure you that as long as we're involved in this council, we will always ensure that we do the very best in accordance with the legislation framework that we work in. So that's what I will say to you on that. As I said, I will get a transcript of all the supplementaries to see if there is some further data, evidence or opinion that we can give all four of you. We do appreciate, I would just say, all four of you in coming forward and asking the questions. This is what we're here for, and I really appreciate it. It's been worthwhile. Thank you very much, Lucy. 15 minutes, eh? Okay. So, thank you. We now go to item 6, which is the overview of the general fund revenue budget for the first quarter. And here there are 5 recommendations. 5 recommendations. I wasn't going to read them out. There you go. And so I'm now going to come for Dave, if you can introduce the paper for us, please.
Thanks, Chair. As you said, this is the projected performance of the revenue budget at the end of the first quarter. And in overall terms, the council looks on track in terms of its revenue budget, but underlying that, there's some really important issues that members need to be aware of. I'm going to start first with the positives, and there are some positive impacts on the budget. I must stress, you may not feel that they're positive, but from a financial point of view, they are. So firstly, we're getting more interest on our investments, which is bringing in an extra £700,000. Secondly, we have energy prices, which have dropped over the last 6 to 8 months, and that's having a positive benefit on the budget. Thirdly, unfortunately, we still have a number of vacancies, which are causing us to underspend on our budgets. Against that, we've got a number of pressures. We have a pay award that's going to be higher than we budgeted for again, and more importantly and worryingly, continuing the trend from the end of the last financial year, we have a number of income budgets that are not performing as we expected, and it's absolutely something we need to keep aware of, and may well have to address the fact that perhaps our income budgets are a little too high. Other than that, we have a number of supplementary budgets which we need to approve at council. Most of those are funded from either earmark reserves or other forms of income, with just a couple totaling around 47,000 coming from the general fund. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, David. I was thinking that we had some more money to spend there, but you reminded me that we haven't, but that's okay. I had a moment of pleasure. I'll ask the leaders if they want to make a contribution or ask something. Councillor Johnson. No, Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. I'm interested in the comment on page 16. I'd just like to know how much money is being lost to the council as a result of it being unable to claim Devon County Council Share Scheme Saving Fund because there's no 100% coverage of the food waste collection service. And my second question is about commercialisation, so a strategic question really. So a couple of years ago, a portfolio holder brought forward a commercialisation strategy, and across the budgets we see a number of budgets which have commercial targets, and there's commentary about them not being met, whether it's commercial rental, waterways, or even the legal service. So I'm wondering whether the executive feels that its approach to commercialisation needs to be reviewed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll pick up some of those questions later on. Councillor Mitchell.
Just one point I raised earlier of concern is the shortfall of just a fraction under £1 million on parking services. And I'm just wondering, David, whether he could outline where the major loss of income is there and whether he believes mid-year we might have to make some adjustments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. David will think about that and he'll get back to us when I'm going to ask him to finalise the other debates and discussion in a minute. So I'm going to open this up now to the rest of the members of the executive. Do I have any contributions to be made? No? Okay, so we've got a detailed question there, David, from Councillor Moore. Which may or may not be, and we may have to respond in writing to that, as to whether or not we look at the consultation process, also the commercialisation. We'll take a look at that and we'll take a view on all of that. So really it's about the parking revenue or the loss of revenue and the thoughts on that, or the projected loss of revenue at the moment. David.
Thank you, Chair. Fortunately, we have the service lead for waste next to us, so I'm reliably informed that 250,000 is the loss of income from Devon as a result of the food waste. In terms of parking, so the immediate answer is no. It's not projected that we need to make any in-year reductions. The positive benefits that I mentioned earlier more than outweigh the costs and loss of income, particularly from parking. But you're right, £1 million is a significant amount, predominantly down to two areas. So a reduction in season tickets and a reduction in commuter travel. So it's predominantly people continuing to work at home, and it's very much linked season ticket sales as a result of that, which are causing the issue. There's no evidence that shoppers, for example, are reducing. It's very much the workers in the city that are causing the issue.
Thank you, David. So there we are. We've got those recommendations up before us. I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much, Mark. And now move on to item 7, which is the 23-24 General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement for the first quarter. And here is that we've got 2 recommendations, which is the overall position and also the amendments for further funding requests of the Council's annual capital programme. I'm again going to ask Dave Hodgson to tell us about his paper. David.
Thank you, Chair. This is the quarter 1 capital monitoring statement. I'm afraid I'm going to sound like a stuck record because I feel that every time I report on the capital monitoring statement over the past couple of years, I'm saying the same thing. So continuing the trend, it's difficult with capital programmes at the moment. It's difficult to get contractors to complete the works, and it's difficult to get them to remain within budget. So we're having a challenging time where tenders are coming back for projects and they're significantly higher than the budget we've set. And that's not because we've suddenly become poor at budgeting. It's just symptomatic of the nature of the construction market as it currently stands. And therefore, you've got the knock-on. There's been a significant reduction in the capital programme, so an expectation that things will be pushed forward into next year. I'm pleased to say that one of our 2 major teams that oversee the capital programme, the engineering team, is now up to full capacity, and we should hopefully see some movement in their line of work. And we're moving forward with the restructure of the property team, which will also benefit us. That doesn't get past the problem of the challenging prices that we're facing. So a small movement in terms of delivery of the capital programme, a significant carry forward of schemes that won't be delivered in this financial year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. I'll come to the leaders as normal. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions on particular items. I would like to know, I'm really pleased about the Guildhall and the work that's been done to the Guildhall, but I would like to know, in completing that work, the corner that's still leaking and potentially damaging the historic picture, if that's going to be completed. And I'm just wanting to know about Choose Weir. It talks about the majority of the work taking place in 25-26. Does that mean the council now has the money to do that work?
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Just one clarification on page 39 there. There's a loan to Exeter City Living for 14.1 million, and it says it's unlikely to be utilised. And the likelihood of the changing environment around Exeter City Living, is that money that we've already earmarked and can utilise elsewhere, or is it a loan that's not been taken up?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, the item on page 35 about the splash pools, it says propose that the schemes be considered a single project, and there's 60,000 minus 60,000 for 2. And then on page 37, it says Hevertree paddling pools. Is that Hevertree and St Thomas, or just Hevertree? So it's just really clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm now going to open it up for contributions from the executive. Does anybody wish to add anything? No? Okay, we've got a couple of issues there about the Guildhall Choose Weir, the 14.1 million. I'll be very interested to know if that's the money we can spend there. And obviously clarification about the splash pool. I'm assuming if it was to include St Thomas, it just might have said that. But David, if you can answer those quickly for us.
So, Councillor Moore, I'll have to come back to you on the Guildhall. I'll need to consult with the property team just to confirm whether any further work is planned in that area. In terms of the £14 million, I hate to disappoint you all, but I will. So no, we haven't taken out a loan for it. It was in the future obviously depends on a decision at council. If that decision is taken, it will be taken out of the capital programme. I'm afraid to say there's no resources backing that, because the expectation was the loan would have been repaid and the interest paid by Exeter City Living. So unfortunately, there's no positive or negative benefit from taking that out of the capital programme. And in terms of Hevertree and St Thomas, merging the two projects in this year, so a small scale piece of work was being undertaken on Hevertree, and the works that were needed for St Thomas were relatively small scale, particularly in value. Those two are being merged. The bigger scheme is about Hevertree and needs a whole. I'm unfortunately not an engineer, but there's a more significant piece of work that's required at Hevertree to complete that project.
Okay, thank you, David. Those two recommendations, I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded, Councillor Wright. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you, Mark. We'll move on to item 8 now, and this is the HRA budget and monitoring report for Q1. And again, we've got two recommendations here, and David Hodgson to speak. Just we know who David Hodgson is. They can't all see your name. Just there may be people saying, "Who is this bloke doing all this talking?" He is the Director of Finance for the City Council, and he makes the reports. He's also called the 151 officer. So if anything goes down, you point to him. And he's the finance officer, prepares all the reports with his team. So I hope that helps some of the members of the public on why David is sort of having to be quizzed on all of these things. David.
Thank you, Chair. And just to stress that if you point at me, I point at the councillors. So in terms of the housing revenue account, I'm pleased to say actually that there's very little to report, and there's nothing of significance to draw members' attentions to in this report. So at this moment in time, everything's looking broadly on track. That's not to not remind members that long-term, medium-term finances of the HRA are tight, and we have an ambitious capital programme, both in terms of new development and maintaining the existing stock, which uses up most of our available resources. But in terms of where we stand at Q1, we're not projecting any significant issues.
Thank you, David. Councillor Mitchell.
No questions.
Councillor Jobson.
No questions.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. The 4 million that's going to be transferred from revenue to capital, is that already committed, earmarked, or just going to be added to reserves on the capital account?
Okay, thank you, David. I'm now opening it up to other members of the executive, if you want to say anything on this report. No. Okay, David, if you just tell us about this 4 million, we are talking about a lot of millions here tonight. I mean, I haven't found anything we can spend yet, so but can you tell us about that?
So this is very much £4 million that you can spend. So in terms of the housing revenue account and the way it works, it's self-financing account. The rents from the tenants are used to maintain and manage the properties on behalf of those tenants. So in terms of the revenue contribution to capital, it's quite common that at least part of the money is used to enhance the properties that the tenants live in. So this is absolutely not transferred to a reserve. It's an expectation that funding will be used to finance the in-year capital programme.
Okay, thank you, David. So there are the recommendations before us. I'm going to move them from the chair. A seconder, please. All right, Councillor Denning to second. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. I'll now move on to agenda item 9, which is the net zero update. And we've got 4 recommendations here. Is it you, Bindu? Bindu, you're doing the report on this? So Bindu will talk us through the paper, and then I'll come on to Councillor Parkhouse, the portfolio holder, if she chooses to add anything in it. Bindu. Bindu is the Chief Executive, everybody. Sorry. Yeah, but they may not be able to see.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So by way of potted history, Exeter City Council became a member of the Exeter City Futures Community Interest Company in 2016. ECF went on to develop the Net Zero 2030 plan, which was adopted by a number of organisations in the city. In November 2021, Executive agreed to the secondment of senior Exeter City Council capacity in the form of 2 days of the Chief Executive and Growth Director and up to 3 days for the Director, Joe Yellen. And that was for a period of a year. That therefore came to an end in December 2022. And 6 months later, Global City Futures, which was the organisation that originally set up Exeter City Futures, moved to close the community interest company down. So the report in front of you, Chair, outlines the summary of the work that was done by Exeter City Futures, acknowledges the closure of Exeter City Futures and sets out some options for how the work can be managed going forward, given members' commitment to the net zero by 2030 target. As part of the report, Appendix 1 identifies the work that was achieved by ECF, and that report is the report of the former Chief Executive and Growth Director. So it talks very much about the success that ECF had in developing a culture of collaboration and innovation, but also highlights the significant challenges ahead for local authorities in terms of achieving net zero Exeter by 2030. Appendix B to the report is an update on the development fund, which I know is an issue, Chair, that members have discussed in the past. So there's just a position statement on that. Aside from that, the recommendations are before you, Chair, and happy to take any questions if I can.
Thank you very much, Bindu. Councillor Parkes, do you want to come in at the stage?
Not at this stage.
I'll come at the end of the discussions. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that the new version of the Exeter Development Fund will go to the Strategic Scrutiny Task and Finish Group that was set up to deal with that. And also to ask for confirmation that the grant funding that was made at various stages to Exeter City Futures for the work on net zero, which was being held by Exeter City Council, has either been spent by ECF in the course of the duties, or is still being held by the council and can then be used for the internal work that's ongoing with ECF.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jobson. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Tackling the climate emergency is one of the 3 big challenges that the city faces. And so I'm quite worried about this report, and I've got 3 questions, really. I've sent in a number of figures.
Yes, you'll get, we've received those.
I'm not going to read them out.
No, I know you're not. I know you're
Thank
not.
you.
I know you're not. And you will get a written reply to all those, which will be appended to the minutes and circulated to everybody. I can assure you of that. But even then, you'll need to give us a bit of time to do that.
That's absolutely fine. I just want to read out of my 3 points, really. So I sent out these figures, which add up to sort of $500,000. I'd like to know how these figures were spent, the approvals, and why there seems to be differing amounts in various accounts. My second question is about the assets that Exeter City Futures may have produced and from their projects, such as particularly the data mill, the net zero plan, what will or what has happened to them. And I have a question really, which doesn't really need a written reply, but I'd be interested in your opinion, please, Leader. Before the 2 senior staff members went on secondment, I asked you about what your expectations were and how you'd be measuring their performance. So I would just like to know, are you satisfied with the outputs that are attributed to Exeter City Futures in the report? And do you think that these move the city on substantially and practically in terms of achieving net zero by 2030? Thank you.
Covering some of the points, but Councillor Moore, but a slightly different way. It might be David best to answer this. Can we have an outline of what the residual assets and liabilities of this organisation are? both in relation to financial assets, physical assets, and the ownership of any intellectual property.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to now offer this one up to other members. I'll come back to Councillor Parkhouse at the end to sum up from the political perspective. Any members of the executive wish to make a contribution? No? Councillor Parkhouse at this stage?
Yeah, sure. So, I'd like to thank officers for report, former and current officers, because obviously this report, the main body of it was written by our former chief executive after his secondment. And thank you to the new chief executive for her work in teasing out some of the elements of that report and the work of ECF that has gone before. So I'm, I guess, less interested in what's come before, but as I mentioned at strategic scrutiny, what's next. So I'm in discussion with officers and stakeholders and other city councils as well about how to resource and the best mechanism to deliver our net zero ambitions. I'd just like to remind everyone that ECF did create that culture of collaboration with stakeholders, and this is a shared responsibility, especially when we look at the city's net zero ambitions rather than just our own internal ambitions. So I just want to reaffirm that I'm continuing those discussions, and it's all a bit of a work in progress, but I'm excited about looking at different options for how to continue this work forward in the future. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Parkhouse. Bindu, are you in a position to give any brief answers to some of those questions? Bearing in mind, most probably we'll need a bit of time to reflect on the transcript and to get a full detailed response, of which I think most of the members will want to see in any event, but Bindu.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the Development Fund update, I'm sure that my colleague Ian, who's working on this, will bring an appropriate report back to members at the appropriate time. So that's definitely a yes from Ian. In terms of the funds that were allocated to Exeter City Futures by the City Council, the simple answer is, Councillor Mitchell, yes, they either have been spent or they return back into our budget to be able to be used both for our internal work, but part of the conversation that the portfolio holder referred to is about how we resource any projects going forward. So we have obviously some limited ability there to look at that funding in terms of the council's internal work as well as externally. In terms of the questions, Chair, which all relate to assets and the financial questions that Councillor Moore put forward, I suggest we pick those all up in a written reply so that all of the data and figures are clear, as well as that reflection on assets and liabilities. One of the questions, Chair, I believe was for you, and that was it. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to say, I think we'd all be interested to know that, because we need to know where we are and what we can do going forward. I'm really pleased that you've asked me my opinion, Councillor Moore. You know me, I'll always give my opinion. And yes, like you and everybody else in this room, I'm very concerned. The world is on fire or underwater at any moment in time. The climate crisis is on us. We have to do everything we can. We've got a Prime Minister telling me, because I live off grid, that somehow this government is going to save me £5,000, £10,000 or £15,000, which I didn't know I had to spend in the first place, but it's a good line. They're telling us that they're going to opt out of a lot of stuff, defer net zero effectively and bringing it forward, putting lots of obstacles in our way as a local authority. So am I pleased? Am I pleased? Not really. Am I satisfied totally? That no, because I would have loved us to have been at net zero already, to do everything that we possibly could, to work with the partners in the city, to work with Exeter City Futures. And so, of course, I can't say I'm totally happy. I'm not even going to criticise. It's a big thing. But we need to remember one thing in this room. We have not been given any support for the greater concept of moving to net zero by government. The only things that we've been able to do is to apply for pots of money for this, that, and the other. For example, the decarbonisation of the Ram and the Riverside. In other words, we have to beg for monies from central government to be able to fulfil their pledges that they made at COP26. So I'm appalled at that, to be perfectly honest. What do we do now that Exeter City Futures are finished? Of course, the chief executive will get back to us, because I want to know that. Do we still want to carry on the work? Councillor Jobson asked a question about the outstanding money. Of course I do. Can I make the buses all go to electric buses? Well, we've worked hard to do all of that. They're Euro 6, the majority of them, which are still reasonable. Okay. Is it good enough? No, it's not good enough. Is the university at net zero at the moment? No, not that I know of. Is all the other agencies that we work to, what are they doing? I'd like to think I could tell them they have to do these things. I'd like to think that I can tell them what to do and how to do it. What I do know is that we will continue to use what I regard as the convening power of the City Council, our influence, to work with and encourage the best we can to move the agenda forward to reach our aims for the city. And that's why I'm pleased, within one of the recommendations, Councillor Parkhouse, together with the Chief Executive, will be deciding and bringing back to us just how we're going to continue. So we're not giving up on anything. We can't give up on anything. We can't afford to. We've heard questions this evening related to about all the issues about basically the ecological problems that we've got and face with traffic and everything else. We've heard it all tonight. We have a duty. I want us and this administration to carry on doing the very best we can. We will be lobbying for support. You work with me on the LGA. They've now reclassified that to be a net zero and infrastructure board that we sit on. We know the big problems that we've got there. We know the willingness of leaders throughout the country who want to make significant change together with those problems that we face. So I can assure you and everybody in this room that the Labour group on the City Council will continue to do anything and everything we can to take that agenda forward with very restrictive finances that we've been given by government. I really do hope things will get better. Okay, we have those recommendations. I'll finish now on that. We have those recommendations, so I'll put that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Parkhouse, the second. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much. We now come on to item 10, which is the review of Exeter City Living. And I believe we have a question from Councillor Vizard, who is speaking under Standing Order 44. Councillor Vizard.
Thank you very much. Good evening. The leader understands the history of the Clifton Hill site and the firm local opposition to development of the green space and land currently occupied by the council's tenants, the ski slope and golf driving range. Indeed, it was under his leadership that a good and balanced decision was made to develop only the broad footprint of the old leisure centre and to retain the rest of the site as public space. In the light of the report on Exeter City Living, please would he reassure me and the Newtown community that the council has no intention of reconsidering the sale and development of the whole Clifton Hill site, that a future sale and development would be limited strictly to the land area that was sold to ECL and that received planning consent.
Thank you, Councillor Vizard. And whilst we're all agreeing with one another, I think you and many people will agree that we as a leadership team and the Labour group actually listened to people in Newtown over their concerns over Clifton Hill and took the appropriate actions. And I know that was appreciated, and there's been a lot of discussion since. The land that was sold to Exeter City Living does not include the green space behind the former leisure centre, nor the golf driving range, nor the ski slope. Valuations on the site to be acquired by the council will be identified. The council still has a strong aspiration, which is clear in manifesto commitments and also with the corporate strategy, that we require housing for people in Exeter. This is to include the required social housing element of 35% subject to viability, and that gets discussed quite a lot. There's already planning permission on this side, and the council will endeavour, under the changed circumstances, to bring forward appropriate proposals as soon as they can. And of course, I can assure you, there will be consultation with local communities and also the people of Exeter with those proposals when they come forward.
Thank you for that reassurance. Do I have a supplementary? May I? Thank you very much. I will take the opportunity to, given the challenging situation environment that development faces, do you have any concerns about the viability of a sale and development of the site as it currently stands, i.e. the footprint of the old leisure centre?
Thank you, Councillor Vizard. Concerns? Of course, we all do at this moment in time, and many of us see development sites, not just in Exeter, but throughout the country, not getting traction at the moment. And there's a number of reasons for that. Since Brexit, labour force has changed in this. We've seen a number of housing companies go under. We had the private companies here in Exeter and not being able to survive the pandemic and came out of it. One of the problems, and it will be addressed by the Chief Executive in the paper that we will discuss in a minute, Clifton Hill itself, we had lots of consultations with the public, to be fair. We've worked hard with local councillors and a lot of groups to get those proposals on the table in an acceptable position to meet the aspirations of the public and also to provide housing for people in maintaining our commitment for no student accommodation in that area. We worked hard. I think that was satisfactory. Our problem was when we went to market, we could not get any takers. Well, we did, but it just didn't work out. The sums weren't going to work out. And there are one or two development sites around Exeter, which is not the responsibility of ECL, which are not happening because of those very problems. So there's nothing new here. So I am concerned with the overall picture of housing development in Exeter, because the requirement and the demands by people we represent who require good homes is not there. And that's what we wanted to provide: good, passive house, environmentally friendly homes for people in Exeter. So I am concerned, but I can assure you we're going to work very, very hard to try to bring something forward in a different model. Don't ask me at the moment what that looks like. The officers will be advising us, and all that will come forward at the appropriate time. Okay? But I do take some comfort from the fact that from the very difficult position of Vaughan Road, which it started about 90, and the problems there, that we've got the first phase of Vaughan Road away, and that was good foresight with planning, with how Dave and the team brought it forward with the HRA and all the directors, that we've got that going. So I think there is a positive demonstration, a commitment by us to bring housing forward despite how difficult it is. Sorry, I've gone on in a bit of a speech there, but it's very important to set the context. Okay, so we now move on to item 10, and we've got a series of recommendations here, which I don't propose to read out. There are 10 in total, and you can basically see that there is in Appendix A, a report from local partnerships, and also Appendix P, which is talking about some of the history and the work of the Exeter City Living. So, Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. So I was going to give a bit of a background and context for the report, as well as outlining some of the key points that are contained within the report. You have just done some of my presentation for me, Chair, so thank you. No, thank you, that's great. Absolutely. So Exeter City Living is a wholly owned company of Exeter City Council, established in 2018, June 2018, with the council as the only shareholder, so the council owning 100% of the shares. The way in which the company is governed is through a management agreement between ECC and ECL, which is Exeter City Living. The chief executive undertakes a formal shareholder representative role, and that's identified in the council scheme of delegation, and that effectively means that the chief executive is the main point of contact and communication between ECL and ECC. The leader and the deputy leader provide guidance and direction on behalf of the shareholder to ECL, and all members agree the ECL annual business plan because this is approved through council every year. It's then the responsibility of the board of directors and the non-executive directors of ECL to deliver according to that business plan. Out of interest, there are 6 staff working at ECL. They are appointed and employed by Exeter City Council and then allocated to work at ECL. In 2018, Chair, there was a briefing to all members where the purpose of ECL was outlined. There were 10 key areas which might immediately perhaps point to some of the tension and challenge that the company faced, but just to give you a flavour of it. So the company was set up to be a vehicle of providing much needed housing in the city, and you spoke to that earlier, Chair, to help us to tackle the housing crisis with an intention to deliver market and affordable homes. It was also an asset available for delivery because there was at that time an ability of the housing revenue account. So this is, as Dave explained earlier, the way in which we maintain our council housing and look to build new council housing. At that time, there was no opportunity for the council to build its own council housing, so this was seen at the time as being a delivery vehicle for that. And importantly, ECL was going to be a leader in placemaking by not just building homes, but creating neighbourhoods and sustainable communities of mixed tenure. So some very laudable aspirations outlined and agreed to by members back in 2018. As you referred to earlier, Chair, the past 4 or 5 years have seen some significant changes in market conditions. So you mentioned Brexit. Obviously, since then, we've had a global pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine, all of which have led to significant inflationary pressures on the economy, increasing the cost of materials, labour and transportation. As a result of that, there have been a lot of uncertainty in terms of the contractor and supplier chain, meaning that the tenders that are coming forward now are outside of the previous pricing norms, and that is to cover the perceived risks of future potential costs of development. Added to that, of course, we have the challenges around the increased cost of borrowing and financing schemes due to the ongoing Bank of England interest rate increases that have been undertaken since December 2001. So these are all, if you like, the macro challenges that the company face. If we look now to some of the perhaps micro challenges, so those which are related directly to this council, you spoke earlier, Chair, about decisions that members made around Clifton Hill. And that whilst obviously that is understandable from the decision that members made, it meant that the company almost straight out of the gate faced a challenge, because not only was there decisions made around the Clifton Hill site, but also around Northbrook Golf Course. So Northbrook Golf Course was one of the sites that was on the original Exeter City Living business plan, potentially obviously lucrative for the company, but members agreed not to go forward with the golf course. So again, removing a potentially profitable site from the pipeline for ECL. I think also we have to recognise, Chair, that the council, in setting up an organisation which was more attuned with operating in a private space, was still subject to public-owned, obviously a public sector ethos. And that at times did create tension for the company in terms of the way they worked, some discussion with members, some communication, and how the company was able to align with the aspirations of the council. And also at the beginning, I talked about the company being set, if you like, 10 objectives, and it's difficult, it has proved very difficult for the company to at times balance those objectives. So for example, if you look at a particular scheme, they're trying to generate a profit by unlocking a difficult site. And so what the company was left working with after the removal of Northborough Golf Course and the wider Clifton Hill area was effectively brownfield sites. And as the director for city development will tell you for hours if you let him, these are very challenging sites. So the company was trying to develop those difficult sites, do placemaking, build high quality homes. And for example, if you undo all of those things in unison, and I guess that the results on Clifton Hill, which we'll go on to talk about in a minute, and the difficult market conditions just meant it was very difficult to square those circles, square that circle. That said, Chair, the company has made significant achievements. Those are outlined in Appendix B. But in particular, I'd like to highlight that they have developed 22 new passive house homes, all for affordable rents, and they're currently on site again with passive house homes, developing 56 new units of social housing. So again, some achievements there in delivering homes, and there is a lot more in Appendix B. In addition to that, we do have planning permission for 41 new homes in the Clifton Hill site, and we've had the demolition of the old rifle range and the leisure centre, which means that effectively that site is ready for construction. In addition, ECL have developed design proposals which are at planning stage for a total of a further 92 homes. Obviously, pending the review, we've not gone forward, the company has not gone forward to seek planning permission for those new homes. And the Exeter City Living team has also been fundamental in obtaining 7.4 million of brownfield land release fund grants from the government for sites which is in their development pipeline. And some of that funding has been used on Vaughan Road and Clifton Hill for demolition. I'll give you a brief financial summary of the company, and obviously members may want to ask further questions of Dave Hudson. Of the total 25 million that was agreed by council to loan to ECL, only 10.9 million of that has been drawn down. So the council has taken an approach of releasing the funding, the agreed loans in blocks, based on the business cases put forward for ECL. So of the agreed 25 million, 10.9 million has been loaned to the company. The company has income from the sale of homes and from this development agency and consultancy services of 7.2 million, but the costs of the company for business costs, development costs, land purchases, loan interest and repayments to the council are 16.3 million. The loan position is, as I said, that ECL has drawn down 10.9 million of the agreed loan. To date, they've repaid the City Council 0.8 of a million, leaving a loan outstanding repayment of 10.1 million. In terms of the assets of the company, there's obviously the Clifton Hill site, and we're going through a valuation of that site alongside a valuation of other sites in the pipeline. And the company has liquid assets to the tune of around 1.8 million. I think it's important, Chair, to recognise that aside from the various contributions that the company has made as identified in Appendix B and I've already spoken about, the council has received over the period since 2018 a total of 3.4 million from ECL, and that's for land, so Clifton Hill site, services that the company buys from the council, rent, as the council rents offices in the Civic Centre building. And that 3.4, which excludes loan repayments and interest, has reduced the need for the council to find savings for its medium-term financial plan. So why then undertake a review of ECL? As you referred to earlier, Chair, in January of this year, it became clear that the company effectively had a failed tender for the Clifton Hill site, which began to lead to concerns about the remaining schemes in ECL's pipeline and their ability within the challenging construction and development market to come up with a feasible and viable plans for that pipeline. The company, obviously, by that stage had already drawn down loans from the council and was continuing to incur costs. And so there began to be concerns relating to the financial position of ECL, its forecast future performance, and its ability to repay the loans. And the concern was at that time that the council could soon be exposed to what officers felt was an unacceptable level of financial risk. There was also some reflections back in January about if we were going to continue with ECL delivering according to the agreed structure, whether there might be some existing governance arrangements that we might want to put in place to further support the company. And so the review was then commissioned from local partnerships who have significant experience in this area of looking at housing development companies set up by local authorities. The scope and the content of the review was agreed between the council and the board of Exeter City Living, and we have continued to work with the board of Exeter City Living throughout the process. So the findings of the independent review, and those are all articulated very clearly in the report, which appears as Appendix B to the main report, but just to pull out a couple of points, if I may. So the findings were that ECL was established with clear objectives, although over time, some of those seems to have shifted from starting off being a delivery for open market housing, then through to social housing, and then conversations emerging about build to rent or buy to rent. So again, the council trying to move with, if you like, the conditions of the market, and perhaps the company being asked to move away from its initial objective of open market housing. It did find that the delegated authority arrangements which were in place between ECC and ECL did strike an appropriate balance between allowing ECL the freedom they needed to operate, but allowing the council to retain sufficient control over its investment. There was reflection that the changes to the housing revenue account borrowing cap so soon after the establishment of ECL, the lifting of the borrowing cap was done within months of the company being set up. And this was identified as a major change in the dynamics of housing delivery within the council. There was then a reflection that the conflicting objectives of ECL, which have been referred to a couple of times now, and the challenges this brings to enabling a viable scheme in the context of a very turbulent external market, was going to present the company with some challenges going forward. And because of that, the challenges in delivering the current pipeline of sites that ECL were looking at were felt to be possibly insurmountable. Crucially, though, Chair, the finding was that there was no plausible strategy in place for the repayment of the loans that the council had provided to ECL. So the ECL would carry on making accumulated losses while making repayments out of the loan that the company had made to it. And effectively, in conclusion, officers felt that ECL, being in a loss-making position with no clear plan of how to rectify this position, with what was seen to be a very challenging pipeline, meant that ECL was not felt to be financially sustainable in the medium to long term. And the feeling was that continued financial support of ECL would compromise ECC's position. So officers appreciate that development is high risk, and feel, though, that the risk now is reaching an unacceptably high level. For that reason, Chair, you will see that the recommendations in the report differ slightly from the recommendations of the review done by local partnerships. And the main difference is that local partnerships recommends a close down of the company. The recommendation before you this evening is that the finding of the local partnerships report be noted, that ECL's achievements to date be noted, but that officers are recommending to members that rather than winding down the operations of ECL, that the company in fact be retained in a very limited capacity for holding and managing property, that property being the 6 flats contained within the Guildhall shopping centre. The rest of the recommendations, Chair, follow from that recommendation to reduce the scope of the company, and ask for delegation to myself in consultation with you to reduce the ECL's activities, and the rest of the recommendations follow from that. I think I'll pause there, Chair. I'm conscious that I've said quite a lot. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bindu. Very comprehensive, and I feel sure you worked it out, Councillor Mitchell. The 25 borrowing that they were allowed, take off 10.9 leaves 14.1, which David explained earlier on. So those numbers actually add up. So I'll come first of all to the leaders. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I've got a number of questions. First of all, I'd like to talk about what isn't in the report, please. So can you confirm that the plans that went to council to set up a build-to-rent company will now not proceed? That was planned to be managed by Exeter City Living. My second question is around recommendation 2.3, which is about managing properties, which obviously are homes. And can you confirm these are being rented out at market rent levels, and that there are no plans to take on any more? And the third question about what's missing is there's a number of connected companies related to Exeter City Living. So Exeter City Group, Exeter City Homes, and Exeter City Living Property Company Limited. I would like to know what is proposed to happen to those. Are they going to continue, or are they going to be wound up? And if they are, then does that need to come to council? Just in relation to the questions from Councillor Vizard, in terms of any disposal strategy that might be presented to council, can you set out, before that strategy is put together, your criteria for protecting Clifton Hill very clearly, so we know that it will be kept for community benefit and not being used for other purposes that are undesirable? And I just want to ask a clarification about the financial position. So Bindu, thank you for setting out that position, which is slightly different from the report. So so that was, you've set out the loss of the company as it stands. You've also outlined the £1 million lost to the council in the report in terms of loss of income and other responsibilities. But it's not yet clear what the future amounts that the council will become liable for. And I feel that before it comes to council, we actually need to be absolutely clear about the full implications of writing off these debts and the effects that it has on the council's budget, which is already under significant strain.
Thank you. Bindu will answer some, and there's a couple there for me to answer, but in the main, that was very detailed and lengthy. We will have to take the transcript and go through it in detail, because I want to do justice to this item to make sure that we get all the answers right. Councillor Mitchell.
Just a few points. On page 98, we show a loss of income to the council and the general fund through services not being bought from us, from ECL in future. Can David or Bindu emphasise the figure quoted of just over £1 million there? Was that is that an annual amount or over a fixed period while the company existed as a totality, or a regular sum? I'd be interested to know how much was there on that particular figure. Coming to the actual report, the external report, we talk of accumulated losses, and they're saying that as of this year, or 23-24, which I guess we're 23-24, the accumulated position is 6 million, and if the company had continued to 25-26, that would be 8.9 million. Of that amount, we've already talked about the 25 million and the 10 million drawn down, and we were told that they had cash assets left of 1.5. Bindu has said no, that's 1.8, and we've got the transfer of assets back to Exeter City Council. Has anyone yet drawn up a figure of what our liability would be if this firm was liquidated? And how does the situation change as we are not liquidating the company? And how much liability will still remain on the company's books that is ours, as well as liability returning to Exeter City Council to be written off?
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
And finally, last point, forgotten on that one. Could Bindu please outline why we did not proceed with the recommendation of the external report in regard to liquidating the company and continue it in a shadow form in effect?
I think we'll be able to answer that one for you. Councillor Jobson.
I'll be pleased to hear that most of those questions have already been asked by me. I was interested in knowing what was happening to the associated companies and of course to the liabilities, but thank you otherwise for a very helpful report.
Okay, and I'll open the floor up, but on those associated companies, I think we'll take that away and we'll give because people want to know that. I think we'll be okay and all, and we will get all that done and that will be done properly. We get that back as a report because there's a lot of detailed stuff there. Bindu, you can answer some of the stuff, but you've got to give fairness to yourself on that. So I'm going to open this up now for other members. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to everybody who's worked so hard to bring these reports in front of us tonight, external contractors as well included in that. I think it's just really worth noting before we move on from this item, the scale of the ambition, and it needs to be commended really, because we've got a housing market in this country that's completely broken, and that is exacerbated here in the city. We do not have enough homes for the people that live here. What this set out to do was to deliver those homes, the right homes, in the right places for the right people. And we specifically set out, before my time, that it wasn't going to be student accommodation. There's enough private providers already doing that in this city. So we were going to build social homes, affordable homes, and subsidise that with some open market homes. There's lots and lots of things that have happened that have all been noted within these reports that mean that just isn't viable currently with the value set that we as Labour-run council bring to this. If we wanted to just build homes and get this done, we could have. We could have built 500 homes probably easily on Northbrook Golf Course, and this company would be turning a profit and it would be continuing. We could have built a couple of hundred homes on Clifton Hill, on the golf course, on the public amenity space there, and on the ski slope, as well as just the old leisure centre. We decided, rightfully in my view, and I think hopefully that view is shared by other members and the public of this city, to protect those really vital green spaces. They're part of what makes Exeter unique and such a special place to live. Now, obviously, there is a huge cost to that, not just the opportunity that we miss out on being able to deliver those homes, but here in front of us is the financial cost of doing that. But sometimes doing the right thing, protecting our city, is more important than just financial gain. So from a pure business perspective, you might look at this and say we've made a bad decision, but they were made absolutely for the right reasons. And that is why we're proposing, I think, if I've read it correctly, that we will not liquidate ECL in its current format, because if that was to take place, that would involve an open market sale of its assets where we would have no control, which would mean, we need to be realistic and honest about this, would mean more than likely student accommodation on Clifton Hill, which is something that we absolutely do not want to see, and we'll do everything we can to stop, because we need to be building homes for local people in our city. So I just wanted to sort of note that and commend the ambition that set us on this path. It's not ended where we wanted it to, but we were right to take this journey.
Councillor Pearce. Do I have any other members of the executive? I know Councillor Wright, who's been dealing with this for a long time. I'll let you come in at the end, Councillor Wright. Councillor Morse and Councillor Denning.
without turning into the cliche that everybody does when we start one of these, I'd like to thank everybody for the report, because I think all of us know how difficult this was to write from every perspective, and I think it's a fair report of the situation, and I'm very grateful for that. I also would just like to take a quick look at the things that changed when this first came to. I was wondering actually whether it was just Councillor Bialik and I that were on the council at the time when it came. Maybe when it came to us, we didn't know what Brexit would happen. We didn't know about Ukraine. We definitely didn't know about COVID. We also didn't know that the government would remove the gap of the HRA borrowing, which actually happened within days of setting it up and completely shook the entire structure. And I would, in saying things, I think agreeing with Martin, this was started with the best of intentions and it's achieved some great stuff along the way. But I think you also need to learn, and thank you to the officers that have written this report, spotted this, that when things aren't working anymore, it's time to stop. So I don't want to undo what was achieved, because I think a lot was achieved and it's quite easy to just sort of bash it and say it didn't work, but it did. But I think also there's something to be said for when you stop pursuing something because it's no longer viable. So I'd like to thank the officers and I'd like to support the recommendation because I think we know it's time to stop.
Thank you, Councillor Moores. Councillor Denny.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Moores and Councillor Pearce has said, but also as the HRA portfolio holder as well, working closely with Exeter Living, you have to look at some of the houses that have been built that council tenants are living in, that they're happy to live in. We have Whipton Gardens, as we know, that the cranes are there and people are going to be living. These are homes that they may not have had if Exeter City Living wasn't there. And we have to look at the positives in that respect. I do think as it's sad that a good intention, unfortunately, has not come to fruition as what we wish to. But as Councillor Moore said, we have to make decisions, and even though we don't want to make decisions like this is one of the things that we have to do. And I also will support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Dunning. Councillor Fowle.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to record my gratitude to the newly elected or new chief executive and the person who's taken over as the acting chief, if you like, of ECL, because I'm delighted this is a part one of the agenda, because I think it's vitally important. It's right and proper to be as open and transparent as possible in these matters. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, did you want to come in there?
Thank you. To reiterate what everybody has said about thanks to the officers, particularly the chief exec and also the acting chief exec of ECL, because this has been very difficult process for everybody. As we've heard, and is very much in the report, the aspirations, the reasons for setting this company up were laudable and are still laudable. The process along the way very clearly mapped out in the report about all sorts of occurrences globally and nationally which had an effect, and the fact that other councils are having to do the same thing with their own arm's length companies attests really to how difficult this is. But also and the reports are brilliant. The LGC report is very good. The officers' report is very good. And that can explain and bring real understanding to anybody that hasn't maybe been involved with this process and perhaps didn't have understanding of it before. It's all set out so well for us all. As Councillor Dunning has said, we have got council houses through ECL, and it's sort of set a precedent. There are some things, and it's in the report, some things that sort of became a precedent that maybe weren't there right at the beginning, that evolved into a precedent that would maybe need to be looked at again. But we've got really good quality houses, and that precedent is there for us, which we'll carry on with the HRA. And alongside all of that it's difficult to make this decision. How far do you go with something where you know that if you are able to afford to actually continue for another 3, 4, possibly 5 years, you are very likely to get to a point where the situation will be very different from where it is today. But because we don't have those available spare funds, we haven't had those spare funds for ages, and perhaps because of the fact that we have had cuts made to councils over the last 13 years, and also a blockage put on housing development, particularly affordable and social housing. This is why the council was trying to navigate all of this, in able to bring something forward, to bring forward housing for Exeter. It hasn't been easy, but at least we had a darn good try. And the fact, I really appreciate the work that's been done by the officers, and I totally agree with the recommendations to try to bring that expertise and some of the plans, and if possible, the staff, which is for our staff officers to work out, to bring that expertise across. I'm sure that we will carry on finding ways to actually build houses in Exeter, despite the restrictions put on us by the current government. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. If you can answer that, what you feel confident to answer, but I can assure what those points have been asked. They're all very valid and important issues that we need to fully understand. And Bindu is going to try to answer that what she can now, because this is important. But you have to understand we will have to look at it in detail to get back the detailed stuff. Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of some of the questions that were asked by Councillor Moore, Councillor Michael Mitchell, the reason why there is no recommendations before you this evening for, let's call them the associated companies, is that those companies, although agreed in principle, were never set up via the process of a business case. So for those companies, the intention is to wind those down, but we don't need members' approval to do so, because, as I said, they didn't go through the process of a business case and so on. I think, Councillor Moore, you asked a question, I think it was about flats, your second question about market rents. So those are the 6 flats in the Guildhall that you're referring to, and yes, those are let at market rent. And then going to your question, Councillor Mitchell, the reason why officers are not putting forward the recommendation from local partnerships to close the company down but to retain it for the purpose of managing those. So those 6 flats obviously sit within the Guildhall shopping centre. The council has no mechanism to hold flats for market rent itself, so they would then come into council stock, then making them obviously eligible for a right to buy at some stage. And that would therefore prejudice anything the council might wish to do in the future related to the Guildhall shopping centre. So I hope that makes it clear. I believe those are all the non-budget related questions. Dave, can I hand over to you for the ones around the finances, please?
Thank you. So in terms of finances, in respect of the £1 million, yes, that's an annual amount. I would remind members, as it says in the report, these are not new savings. These are reductions that would have been required in 2018 when we set up the company, and therefore essentially it's just bringing those back that we would otherwise have had to make 5 years ago. So in terms of the liabilities and the liabilities of the company, one of the benefits of a managed winding down of the company and reduction is that we can actively manage with the company their liabilities. So the anticipation is that as the company reduces, the only liabilities it will have will be to the council. So we have the company has every intention of paying its creditors, all its council creditors from its existing cash funds, and therefore the only outstanding liability will be the loan to the council. Alongside that, it has assets. It has the cash at bank. It has the Clifton Hill site. It has other work in progress that it has maintained. So there's a number of liabilities, assets that the council will seek to acquire and reduce accordingly the loan by that value. That will be the only liability. Any outstanding liability in terms of that loan, then the council, the chief executive and the leader have sought delegated powers to write off the rest of that loan. That will then give the company in its tiny state a positive balance sheet for which it can continue to trade. And I want to stress, in terms of those flats, it is purely a managing, it uses a managing agent to manage them, and therefore it just passes through the rent less a small management fee for overseeing that. So in terms of staffing, it won't require staffing for those. It uses managing agent. I think that was all the questions in respect of finance.
So thank you, David. We will pick things up. I was asked by Councillor Moore about further questions about Clifton Hill. I believe I gave Councillor Vizard my answer on all of that. As for our commitment, I made a commitment in 2019, whereas I have changed my mind on a lot of things. And I think politicians should change their mind when circumstances change, and they should reflect the current positions. I've not changed our position on any of that for now. We want to maintain homes for people in Exeter. We want to make sure that there are good green spaces. I believe that was the right thing that we've done on Northbrook, working with the Wildlife Trust to make sure that's protected for people in Exeter. Much appreciated. It's the same on what we've done with a number of other areas. So I think we made the right decision here. There will be further updates and reports at the appropriate time. This isn't going to be taken away and dealt with secretly, because I can tell you we've had to deal with this for a few months now. And all I would say, I get what we talk about, and it was an annual, that £1 million is annual, David, isn't it? That was what you were asking, Councillor Mitchell. This has worried me greatly. We've spent a lot of time, and all the executive, by the way, they've been sharing my pain and on this. Disappointed that it's come to this, but disappointed for the reasons which I gave the supplementary reply to Councillor Vizard. I do not believe we would have been acting responsibly, that we could have put ourselves in jeopardy of breaching the Prudential Code if this carried on. They were able to. It is, and I've used this example many a times, if you can't afford to pay your mortgage, you won't get much luck by going to your bank and say, would you give me a loan to pay the mortgage? Now, we always accepted that with all fledgling companies, they are going to make losses, and that was all projected at the start. But it became clear of all the change in circumstances. So I believe we've done the right thing, and that was a first-class report from Bindu, and I would like to share in the commitment that all the officer team, and I know they've been working hard at it for a long time, the legal side of it, the financial side of it, the housing side of it. We've still got an aspiration. We've still got sites that can come forward. We will be bringing them forward because we need those housing. You know, we're not saying that we haven't got any targets here in Exeter. We've said that we're going to do 12,000 homes over the 20 years. So that's a target we've set ourselves. And I'm not asking anybody that we want to do away with our targets in the future. So in finality, at council, if I was asked to sing on my views of this, because we do that now occasionally, don't we? I'd sing, I get knocked down, but I get up again. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. So I've got some recommendations here. I've appreciated the discussion. Leaders, I will get you those responses, okay? They are very important. And of course, As you know, you can always ask further questions in an email or there's other opportunities that we meet that you can ask these questions. So it's not closed down now. So I make that offer there. So I'll move the recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please, Councillor Wright? To second. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you, as I say, for the time and the discussion around that. So we come to item 11 now, the consultation on the local tax support scheme. We've got a recommendation here, and I'll come to Councillor Denning after I've asked who David doing council tax scheme. David.
Thank you, Chair. So this report follows on from the report you received at the last executive in September, which asked you to agree in principle to support a Pan-Devon proposal to support care leavers in terms of supporting their by a reduction in their council tax. So this is a formal request to go to consultation to incorporate the support for care leavers into our council tax support scheme. That enables the costs to be shared equitably between all preceptors. In terms of the consultation, we have two strands to that consultation. One is to formally consult with the other preceptors who are impacted by the decision, and secondly to formally consult the wider public. The consultation of the wider public will start in a couple of weeks after council if it's approved, and we will also formally write to the preceptors and then come back to members. This will enable us, if approved by council, to enact this from the 1st of April 2024. As members will be aware, council tax support can only be enacted on the 1st of April of any given year, not mid-year. As part of the proposal, the plan is still to start the support for care leavers on the 1st of October, and the first 6 months would be supported by the City Council alone through its powers of discount. But then going forward, as stated, it will be shared equitably. So,
thank you, David. I'll come to the leaders. Councillor Jobson.
Nothing to comment on this, saying that we fully support the giving care leavers the council tax.
Thank you, Councillor Jobson. Councillor Moore. Okay. I'll open this up. I'll come to Councillor Denning at the end. Okay, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just want to really support this recommendation. I think it's really valuable. It's a relatively small financial cost to the council compared to what some of the figures we were just discussing on the previous item is, but actually the sort of support that we are able to offer if this is approved to some of the most vulnerable people in our city will be incredibly valuable to them. This is a cohort of people who have been at the sharp end of all the savage cuts over the last 13 years. You know, support has been pulled away from them at every opportunity. So that's Devon County Council and government funding that has reduced and made life harder for people. And these are people that Devon County Council have got what's referred to as a corporate parenting responsibility. So, you know, they've handed out some really savage treatment to their own children, and that's something that has to stop. And if we can do a little bit to try and alleviate that and make their lives a bit more stable and a bit more affordable, I think we should all be doing that. So I commend this recommendation to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
I'd also like to support the recommendation. I think it's really important that we understand what the term corporate parent means rather than just flinging it around. So the term corporate parent means those who've got some sort of responsibility for children in care. When they look at that child, they think, is this good enough for my child? And my children, I think, are pampered and have far too much from their parents. But having spent time at county council, the impact of being in care has such a dramatic impact on these young people in education, mental health, physical health sometimes, and just well-being generally. So anything we can do as a local authority, I think it's really important to help, and I'm more than happy to accept my corporate parenting responsibility as a city council. My plea would be a bit like Councillor Pearce. It would be nice if some of the other authorities with corporate parenting responsibilities took them as seriously as we are.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, I'll come to Councillor Denning.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad and very happy to have heard the Councillor Morse and Councillor Pearce saying what they have in regard to this recommendation. Nobody could ever think that these young people could be so disadvantaged just by no fault of their own, and just having this motion just to help them along the way. I said the last meeting, did the analogy about pampered children having the bank of mum and dad. These children don't have the bank of mum and dad, and we are their mum and dad in some respects. So I think that we should accept this recommendation. I'm really proud to say that Exeter City Council has put forward this recommendation, and I ask all of you to support it.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's any questions for you to answer there, David. So that's the recommendation for you. Councillor Denning to second. Okay, and I'll move those. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you, Mark. We move on to item 12 now, which is the Exeter plan, the full draft plan consultation. And here we have there are 3 recommendations, and I'm going to ask Ian Collinson to speak to the report, and then I'll defer to you, Councillor Morse, the portfolio holder. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So what is the Exeter plan? Just to remind everybody, it will shape the future of the city for the next 20 years. And it's our main planning policy document, and will replace previous versions that were adopted in previous years, as far back as 2012. Why is it so important? We'll use it to determine planning applications, but it's far more than that. It will direct growth and development of the city in the right places at the right time, and it will curate high quality design and sustainability for our city. It will also set out our infrastructure requirements and what's needed to be delivered through the planning process. So that's the sort of place-making element, if you like. And finally, it provides a framework for future investment by our partners in the city. So how have we got here? Work started back in 2020 when we published a consultation issues paper. That was backed up roughly this time last year when we published the first outline draft of the plan. And then since that time, the team's been working really hard, looking at the feedback that we've received from all those consultations and using that information, as well as gathering more evidence that's gone into this now full draft of the plan. So what is that full draft? What's in there? So there's a full suite of planning policies now under a variety of key themes that you would expect to see. There's a spatial strategy, and that of course incorporates the brownfield first approach. That's really important because that focuses on things like net zero, having a healthy and active population. It's also about guiding development to previously developed land and away from our important green spaces like our valley parks. There's also a proposals map now, and that shows all the individual development sites that have been proposed, as well as special areas for protection, again, like areas like the valley parks. There's also a vision within the plan. That's the Exeter 2040 vision. and that's also backed up by livable Exeter principles. The plan itself has been designed so that each policy in the plan is matched across to that vision and also the corporate plan, so that it can drive the delivery of those vision outcomes and the principle and the priorities, that are within our corporate plan. For the larger development sites, the policies are also anchored by those livable Exeter principles. These are all about high quality, sustainable development and ensuring that new development will match our high aspirations for the city. I'm really pleased as well to report that since the last draft, where we had 6 principles, we've added a 7th now. And that's all about connected culture. And it just recognises the important role which culture plays in placemaking. So just finally, then what happens next? So if the executive is minded to approve this report tonight, there'll be a public consultation. Again, like last year, it'll be run for 12 weeks. So that's twice the statutory requirement. It'll run from later this month until the end of January. It'll repeat much of what we did successfully last year as well. So there'll be an online platform, and we'll have regular public-facing meetings and exhibitions across the city. Following that, we'll carry on with the evidence work, carry on analysing the consultation responses, and then we'll look to submit or produce a further draft of the plan. That will be the submission draft, which again will be subject to more consultation next year. And then following that, we'll submit that plan, or that version rather, for examination to the planning inspectorate, which will take place hopefully early the following year. And we'll be looking to adopt the plan by December 2025, if not sooner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Just want to ask about the. First of all, I want to say that I'm pleased that it's going to be a 3-month consultation. That's very good. I just would like to know about your comment in the report about the carbon footprint environmental implications. So, in terms of the full plan that's being produced, what environmental assessment will be produced of the plan itself in terms of its contribution or detriment to achieving net zero and its implications on the climate, and also the impact of climate change on these proposed developments? So, for example, in relation to things like flooding, overheating, that sort of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. Pleased to hear that there's going to be more travelling exhibitions, because they were certainly quite popular last time. One area I do wonder if you're still gathering evidence on is that of flood risk, because you'll know there have been 2 bad incidents this year, in May and 17th of September. And in one road in particular, it's been discovered that the water drainage merges with the sewage system, and sewage is bubbled, and on 2 occasions now has gone into people's houses and outside of school. And so I'm just wondering what further work is being done to ensure that the entirety of the Exeter sewage system in the main, that's probably a very bad pun, I did not mean that, is going to be up to speed to meet the necessary infrastructure.
We've got a couple of questions there which don't relate to the recommendations at all, and I think we'll pick them up, and they're also, if you don't mind me saying, contributions that you may want to make to this consultation. Because what we're doing is we're going out to consultation. This is what we're being asked to do tonight, is to say, yes, we're going out to consultation. So Ian has clarified the period of consultation. It's about the consultation. Take your point, you want to see more travelling road shows, as you say, and that's all being dealt with. within this thing. So I just want to stick to the recommendations as opposed to any particular thing that you see in the report that you may have a view about, because that can be picked up through the appropriate time. So before Councillor Morse will come in at the end, is there any other councillor who wishes to? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say what a fantastic document this is. It represents a huge piece of work. And I just wonder how many comments, feedback did you have, in the previous consultation which pulled all of this together? Because it's unimaginable to me how you managed to put all this together, and you've produced a very accessible and readable document, and it's easy to find your way around it. And I'm sure there'll be little tweaks that you have to make, but I'd say congratulations to the whole team for this wonderful piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, and I'll ask George to come in at the end of all of that. Do I have any other councillor who wishes to come in? Councillor Parkhouse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I hope you'll allow me a little bit of discretion about talking about the content of the plan itself. I know from coming into this role in May about the hard work that's gone into the climate change element of this report. Obviously, there was this big consultation last year on the plan. It's great to hear that we're going to replicate that again and hear more about some more concrete proposals. And I know that a lot of what's in the section 4 of the current draft of the plan is being the hard work of the Net Zero team in collaboration with the climate experts at the University of Exeter. And that's really great to see that a lot of these proposals are really where we can make the difference as a city council. A lot of people, I think, probably underestimate the impact that planning can have. Obviously, we're, as you mentioned earlier, Chair, facing this climate crisis. And logically, residents say to me, well, why are we putting in boilers in new properties? And I can understand that concern. And so it's great to see that we're holding the government to account on their future home standards and buildings that is hopefully going to come in. I was also disappointed to see that the government decided to defer their biodiversity net gain policy. So it's just great to see that we're trying to put in stuff locally that perhaps the nationally the government is reneging on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkhouse, and that was absolutely fine, by the way. Is there any other contributions? If not, I'll come to Councillor Morse.
I'm going to begin it with a slight aside after Councillor Parkhouse. I sat through a delegated briefing earlier today where we are pushing still, despite it not being legislation, to get that biodiversity net gain on applications. Whether we're always successful without the law behind us is a different thing, but I just want to make it clear that as a local authority we're already running with that and trying our best. So we don't always just listen to what government say. I'd secondly like to say that I work with a very small and select gang of planning superheroes who not only have done this amazing document, but I think with the context you should also understand that we've done a review of the SILS payment schedule this year, Article 4 direction, and there's a third thing and I've forgotten what it is. But but they have been working so hard, and actually to my knowledge, those things we threw at them from nowhere. It was not in any way something they intended to do. So the fact that we have this document in front of us that is incredible and is our third bite of the cherry, because the first time we went out to the public with this, I sat in the library with George and people came in and went, well, there's not a lot here, is there? And we went, no, because we want you to tell us what's going to be in the next bit. And then we went out last time and they went, well, there's not a lot to that. It's just a lot of ideas, isn't it? There's no actual policies. So this time we've got policies. So I'm hoping that we can have the kind of contact that we had last time. We had an unprecedented amount of replies, and we're ridiculously proud of that. And that's why there will be versions of the roadshow again. A lot less Lego this time. I don't know what we're going to have instead. Maybe some Play-Doh. I don't know. But we will be taking that seriously, that interaction that we have. And again, I'm really grateful about the 12-week time, because there are all sorts of processes just legally we have to do to ensure that this happens, and there are bare minimums. And as a local authority, we and a planning team who've taken it really seriously to not just do the bare minimum. So I'd like to thank my team, and I'd like to say to anybody who's still in the room that didn't want to leave, now's the time to engage with stuff, because it can have a real difference on what your communities look like in the future. So please do engage with our local plan.
Okay, thank you. I think that's okay. We've drawn that one to an end. We've got 3 recommendations there, which I'm going to move from the chair and ask Councillor Morse to second. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. I'll move on to item 13, which is the consultation on Water Lane Development Framework and Design Code Supplementary Planning Document. Here again, we have 3 recommendations, which is also consultation. I just want to throw that in at the start. So, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So Water Lane, why Water Lane? Well, this has been such a long-standing ambition of this council to regenerate the area. You can actually go back to one of our earlier local plans that was published in 2005 to find that the majority of what we now call Water Lane was allocated for mixed-use development. That did at the time included the Quay and the Canal Basin area. Bring it back now to today, Water Lane is now one of our flagship livable Exeter projects, and we're looking at potentially 1,500 new homes for the city in this area. So what we're trying to do with this document, we're trying to curate a new vision for Water Lane, which is all about high quality, low car neighbourhoods that is focused on the Exeter Ship Canal. So that vision, that will be driven by those livable Exeter principles that I referred to earlier and that you're all very familiar with and that are anchored in the Exeter plan. So that vision, if I was to put that into one sentence, I would say the vision for Water Lane is really just to extend what you've already got in the Quay. It's as simple as that. So translate that wonderful, vibrant, mixed-use community into that area of Water Lane that's currently derelict and quite sad, really. I think you'll see a different form of development with this vision. It will be very urban in character. So that means we're looking at high densities, but we're also looking at combining that with the rich cultural heritage that's down there based on that historic ship canal. We're looking at this to be exemplary in terms of sustainability, but we're also looking at trying to create an enterprising community, so jobs and creativity and learning as well. So this design code, it's a kind of set of rules really for developers, but it's also helpful guidance. So it does set that vision for them and for us as a city council, and there's a master plan that kind of sets out how those rules might be applied across a large area. This is something like 36 hectares of land. So what the code does, it defines what you could call a key place-making element. So all the infrastructure, all the connections, all the networks of pedestrian cycle movement, but also traffic where it's possible. And it'll determine the priorities for that infrastructure, those place-making elements that will make it a success, just like the Quay. So why do we need this code now? We're bringing forward a new local plan. So why do we need that now? Well, what we're trying to create is a compact and complete and connected community down there. And that needs comprehensive planning and development. And we need to coordinate between different land ownerships and different infrastructure requirements. It's quite complex situation in Water Lane with different landowners working at different rates and different objectives. And there's also some incredibly challenging constraints there, including a high pressure gas main. This is all within flood risk zone 3, the clue's in the name, Water Lane. And there's lots of other issues to tackle. So we need that sort of comprehensive view, and as I mentioned earlier, that curation of a vision that will help the landowners and the developers bring things forward that we can be proud of. So this report tonight in front of you is to ask for your consent to consult on this draft design code. But we've already done a lot of engagement in getting it to this place. We've worked with stakeholders, we've worked with landowners quite extensively where they've been prepared to talk to us. Not all of them have, but we've worked with them where they've been prepared to have meaningful conversations. We've worked with lots of councillors at various levels. We've worked with key local community groups and met them on several occasions, both in group meetings, but also on one-to-one level. And we've even had a design review, an independent design review panel of the code. So this next stage is to go into that formal public consultation now, where we'll go out to a much wider audience and gain views. So the next steps would be that if you consent to this consultation, we'll go out to consultation at the same time as the Exeter plan. We thought that was important because it does feed off the Exeter plan in many ways, even though the actual SPD, the supplementary planning document, hangs off a policy in the adopted local plan. We need to do that for legal reasons, but it does kind of create a bridge between that older policy and what we're bringing forward with the Exeter plan. So it kind of made sense that we consult together at the same time. So if that consultation is successful, which I'm really sure it will be, the plan would be then next year to bring back the SPD in its final format for this executive and then full council to adopt formal planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And I'm going to say to people, please read the recommendations. That is what we're discussing and agreeing to this evening. So, Councillor Jobson.
That is going out to consultation at the same time as the plan. It'll give people a good chance to have a read of it and to comment.
Glad you approve. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. This is an important document. Residents in this area of the city particularly are very interested and keen to engage with it. So can I ask a question? I hope this one can be answered at this evening. As this is going out for draft consultation, can you give an indication of the weighting that this will be given in assessment of future of planning applications that may come forward? I'm not talking about any specifically at the moment, but any applications that may come forward before this is approved. And can I ask how you would be looking to approach? There's a number of sort of issues which potentially conflict with one another or conflict with what's in here. So I just would like to know the sort of process for resolving these. So there's particular concerns around the environment and also the canal and maintaining the health of the canal and the water. And also there's particular concerns over the transport in the area, particularly how it impacts on the existing area nearest to the quay where people already live. Thank you.
Okay, come back to Councillor Morse in a moment. Is there any other members of the executive who'd like to say something to the recommendations, if at all possible? No? Councillor Morse.
Yay, more planning. First of all, I'd like to say, well, objectively, Ian can describe parts of Water Lane as sad. And I think there are parts of it that are, it's also a home. It's a place where people live. The whole point of this document is to improve that community and make it more vibrant, as Ian has said. to get to the point where we've made this document, we've already engaged with communities and stakeholders, which gives me hope that this document, as it stands, is a good document already. But this is really the important time for people to engage with this and see how we move forward. And as things come up and things may be heard, we'll obviously look at them and come back and make any alterations that we feel are necessary.
Okay. Ian, there was some detail about the consultation, which I'm going to have to ask you to take it away, because that's it. So we've got those recommendations. I'm going to move the recommendations. Councillor Morse to second. All those in favour?
Thank you, David. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 14, which is the Householder's Guide to extension. Yeah, I know I was going to say the same. I was going to say the same. I wanted to, but you knew what I was thinking. Extension design to the supplementary planning document, SPT. I intend to finish this agenda tonight. You must talk to the recommendations. If there are points of clarification, I will take them. If it is comment about it all, you must fulfill the consultation or email Ian direct. We have to deal with this. Is an executive, not a scrutiny meeting. It's an executive decisions on the recommendations. That is how I'm chairing it, and that's what I would like to do. Ian, can you speak to the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. So very similar to the previous two reports, this is seeking your approval to consult on a SPD, which this time is about looking at what we call householder applications. So roof extensions, kitchen extensions, loft conversions, that sort of thing. It's really well established, this work, and it just needs updating because legislation has moved on, practice has moved on. We've had lots of appeal cases and that sort of thing. So we just needed to update this, and it's important because we get lots of these sorts of planning applications. Often this is the only time that local people actually engage in the planning process, and it's about their homes. It's about improving their own living environment. But it's also important because that could impact on their neighbours. So we have to get it right. And we have to have good guidance and good policy. So what this is about, what this document is about improving the way in which those applications are submitted, helping people, individual householders, to overcome some of the obstacles, but also bearing in mind and letting them understand the sort of impacts that it could have on their neighbours. So like all supplementary planning documents, we have a statutory duty to consult before we can adopt this as formal policy. So as I said before, that's what this recommendation is for, is to allow that consultation. And then if that's successful, we'll bring it back to Exec and full council to approve it as, again, formal planning policy.
Okay, before I bring in the leaders, just to, because I know that you take a number of documents to the planning member working group, which are now minuted on the key things, so it's all transparent and out there. Has this been and will it go once we've gone further on? So that is where I'm suggesting any detailed stuff. We're dealing with the recommendations here tonight, so there will be opportunities, and it's open to all councillors to go to that, to put any further things into all of this. So it's just the start of the process. So, Councillor Moore, Councillor Jobson, any other member? Councillor Wright, and I'll come back to you at the end, Councillor Morse. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just quickly I'm probably now going to be told off, so I'm deviating from the recommendations, just to say it's so easily accessible, clear, and it's the set out of it is such a vast improvement. The only thing where it goes a little bit wrong is when you click on the link to Planning Portal England, which isn't ECC's fault, and you can't open it up very well on an iPad. So I think we ought to get onto Planning Portal England about that. So I support this going to consultation, Chair. Thank you.
and that was perfectly fine. Don't get too worried about things. Is there anybody else wish to say anything? If not, I'll come to Councillor Morse.
First of all, I think this has already been to planning member working group. So before it came to us, it went there for any further comments, which seems the best way around to do it. This is not probably the sexiest of planning documents that we deal with, and definitely not the one most tonight, but it's probably the one that is most used by members of the public, because most people are wanting to put a dormer window in, or an extension on the front or the back or the side, or whatever the things are. So all the documents I've talked to you tonight are really important, but don't think just because this feels like a small one, it isn't. So please engage with it.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. There's a theme running through those contributions of the last couple of items. So those recommendations, I'll move them from the chair. Can Councillor Morse second? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Okay, I'll move on to item 15, as we're all thinking of our tea. Food Law, Health and Safety Enforcement Service Plan. And there's a couple of recommendations here. I'm going to ask Simon, who's been waiting a long time. Is that your tummy rumbling just now? You're going to tell us, and then I'll come on to Bob presently. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. For members, this is a report I have to bring by law every year. 12 months have passed since I appeared before you. And I need obviously full approval from council. I'll just make 4 points to this report, if I may, Chair. Firstly, there's been 183 new food business registrations with the council, which shows that we are still growing. In terms of compliance with food hygiene law, I'm presented 99% tonight, which is the highest ever since we launched the scheme in 2011 in the city, which shows how responsible we've got in terms of food businesses, in terms of complying with the law. But I think a lot of credit goes out to the very, very small team of dedicated officers that have a fantastic relationship with food business operators, and their ability to persuade and cajole compliance where needed, and change a course of action where things perhaps are not going right. And one of the credits to that is when you've got businesses prepared to phone up and say, look, I don't think this is quite going right, can I get your help? You know you're onto a winning formula. I'll also just highlight it's not just about food safety. This is about health and safety as well. And there's been a lot of work undertaken in the last financial year to help get businesses and event organisers in particular back up following the global pandemic, and give advice on infection control, how to run an event safely, and to reinvigorate that confidence back into the public within the city. And thankfully we have seen a number of high profile events that have been successful in the city during that 12-month period. My last thing to just sort of point out is environmental health officers are becoming a bit of a rare breed. I know planning officers are in the same boat. And I'd like to draw attention to the fact that we have struggled, and the team has been innovative in bringing forward a route of recruiting 2 apprenticeships using existing posts from within the service. They've very much driven that. I've probably been the negative one. And I'm proud to say that at the start of September, 2 new apprentices landed in the service, are doing their degree through Western College on a day release with us. And I'm proud that we are leading the way in developing the next generation of environmental health officers with the council, because unfortunately they're not there for us to pick up on the open job market.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Jobson. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'd just like to follow up a question in relation to the plan and the recommendation to deliver that for next year, and the point on 9.2 around the budget. So will the team have sufficient resources to be able to deliver the plan as expected, or will there continue to be that struggle?
Thank you. I will pick that up in a moment. Before I come to Councillor Foll, is there anybody else wish to make a comment? Councillor Parkhurst.
I've been told I don't have to make a declaration of interest because I work in a cafe anyway, I work in a cafe, and from the feedback that I've heard, I wasn't there on the day that they were inspected, but the feedback that I've heard is that they were really impressed with the level of service, and they said it was a really collaborative and cooperative process, and they didn't feel like they were coming in and, you know, these are the things you need to improve. It felt very much like this is what we can work on together, and I just wanted to share that. Probably you don't hear that a lot, the kind of positive feedback from that process. And I think the 99% is obviously, you know, really reflects the how well the team is working. I'm just curious because you mentioned that it's an improvement what the previous year's percentage was for that figure of like broadly compliant with food hygiene law. Thanks.
Come on to that in a moment. Simon, and I assume that's volunteering in the... Yes, so it's before people start checking your declarations of interest. Yes, that's what I mean, for paid work or anything, you are volunteering in there. Yeah, paid, good. So, good, that's all right, it's fine. Councillor Foll.
You want to add anything to the report?
I'll be on.
Food safety.
No, I'm sorry.
Councillor Wright.
I'll say what the Councillor Foll should have said. No, I just, yes, I know it's a statutory duty and you've got to do this by law every year.
Yeah, but that we have noted what you said, I think, and particularly about the apprenticeships, because bringing forward people into these areas that are essential for the operations of a council, but actually essential for the health and well-being of residents in the city, is a huge thing. So I've deviated from the report again, but I just want to say that I think we're all really pleased to hear what you said about bringing in apprenticeships into that area.
That's what I was going to say.
I thought so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foll. Simon, there are a couple of questions there. Are you in a position to be able to answer them quickly for us this evening?
Yes, absolutely. On the budget stroke resources question, the team has remained unchanged now for a number of years, and you can compare that with the previous reports. And we have adequate resources to discharge our statutory functions in both food safety and health and safety regard. With regard to food hygiene rating, you're now getting me to rack my brain. It was either 97 or 98% last year. I'll have to look it up and come back with the exact figure.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, I'll move the recommendation from the chair. Councillor Foll to second. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has it carried.
Thank you very much. We'll now go on to item 16, which is the Air Quality Annual Status Report, and I believe there's been circulated a supplementary appraisal report, which is being done in print and also on email. So, Simon, if you can talk us through those two recommendations, please.
Okay, so has been said earlier tonight, our job as a city council is to monitor and report on air quality within the city. Ultimately, the ability to improve air quality further lies with a myriad of partners, but ultimately it's down to each and every one of us residents to do our individual bit if we're going to take this agenda further. Now, air quality is monitored in the city through two routes. One is that we have two fixed air quality monitoring stations that predate my tenure at the City Council. And then we have 85 diffusion tube monitoring locations across the city, which are largely looking at areas where we believe there is a problem, although we do have some background monitoring. It's a bit like a big science experiment in a way, because you've got to have controllables and you need reference points and things like that. So just to talk about that diffusion tube model, to just clarify a few points here, is that they're up on a lamppost for a month at a time. They get sent away to a certified laboratory for detailed analysis. Those results are pulled together, and it's quite a laborious process, and they have to be pulled together in a report template that the HM government requires, and you're largely seeing that today. And that is then trawled over by appointed government consultants who look at the data that we provide to check that the quality assurance and quality control procedures have been correctly applied, and the data that we as professionals are presenting is accurate. It then goes through a further process of review by officers in DEFRA, who are the government department that lead on air quality, who then present an official report back to councils that we report on. Now, the highlight is, and I've been now presenting, I think this is the 11th edition of the annual status report I've produced, air quality has improved in this city over that 10 years. And we are at one area for the reporting period that was in exceedance, which was in Hevertree, as we've heard today. Now, just to sort of apologise for the lateness of the additional supplementary item, this is, while it's dated July 2023, that's the date that the consultants employed by DEFRA have done their analysis and sent it back to DEFRA. However, we've only received this today, which is fortunate. Normally, we do receive that a lot earlier, but that is beyond our control. So what I would just draw members' attention to is the 5 commentary points, as they've called them this year, that are in the report. First of all, I won't go into items 1 and 2 in too much detail, other than they are basically giving us a pat on the back to say you are doing the reporting as you should be, and you've provided some good supporting maps and graphs accordingly. Just to address the last 3 points in particular. One is actually the diffusion tubes that we didn't put the nearest road in are actually in the middle of public spaces. And previously they didn't want a nearest road. So we will scratch our heads and do some calculations from the tube to the nearest road to work out which roads to put in future reports. The key performance indicator, which has not been filled in, relates to ones around communication. I'm not quite sure what they want, other than we've either done it or we haven't. But again, we will look to address that in the forthcoming year. And then the last point really goes to next year. We will be reviewing the air quality management areas and the action plan, and that really is guiding us on there. And there's a lot of commentary in the rest of the document around the fact that we haven't got any exceedance of the 1 hour nitrogen dioxide, and basically DEFRA saying this has been now for 4 years. We think you should not now include it because we're satisfied that it has been achieved. And also DEFRA do talk at great length about the fact that we need to consider the review of our air quality management area, because obviously we first declared it back in 2005. Things were a lot different back then, and obviously the area of exceedance has reduced. So I'm pointing that out to members. We will have next year's data when we are reviewing the air quality action plan and the air quality management area. But obviously we are being asked to consider that very carefully by DEFRA over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Simon. That was very helpful. And I was picking up there, and perhaps after we've gone around the table, you may want to, I think I get it, because some people look at the reports and say, why is this 18 months, or what is this 15 months out of date? And this is where we've had some valid questions from members of the public, and even some of us around this table say, why just can't they do something? I think you started to explain there the process of what has to go through the people that have to review it. It's not as simple as just taking this down, shaking it, getting the number out and writing it down. If only it was that easy. And so you've explained the process, and perhaps you may want to help us to understand or to ensure, because this is the issue, is it the information you expect the July to now out of your control, out of our control? Is this normal? Is this what the expecting is? Or it just takes that sort of time, if you know what I mean? Because that is a lack of understanding from a lot of people when they see these reports. retrospectively they look at it. So I'll come to the leaders first. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. And it is indeed good news that the air quality has been improving, although we have to be minded and understand about the impacts of long-term exposure to high levels of air pollution, even if it's not above those illegal limits. So just would like to clarify this additional report that's been sent is talking about looking at the air quality management area. Does that include looking at the actions contained with the air quality management plan, because some of those are no longer deliverable, and there might be things that we could do better because this has been in place for a number of years?
Okay, thank you. We'll sum that up at the end. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. Dealing with the recommendation, really, the report I noticed dated June. Would it not have been possible to bring it to this committee before October? There have been other executives, so that data was available earlier. And the problem with a report that's dated June that doesn't get dealt with until later is that there are then things that are wrong in it, such as we know that co-cars and co-bikes have demised since that report was written, and they of course are referred to in the report. So I know it's probably difficult dealing with DEFRA, but is there any way that it can perhaps be brought more up to date?
Thank you, Councillor Jobson, and I'm hoping that I sort of led Simon to try to answer some of that about dates. Are we getting it as soon as we can? And that is your concern, and that is the concern of many of us. So before I come to Councillor Fowle at the end, is there any other? I've got Councillor Williams and Councillor Morse.
Well, I've been looking forward to this report all evening, because I, as an analytical scientist and chemist, this is just wonderful stuff. And I think for our public audience who have stayed the course with us, so thank you very much. I know that you'll be particularly interested in certain graphs and trends, as I have been. And so the one on page 46, which shows the heavy tree corridor, and there is a lovely trend downwards on the 5 years, with obviously the exception of when we had COVID, and so it was a really big dip then. But we are on trend, and even for the East Wanford Hill, which is, I think, detector DT57, you see it's in my brain, that is due to sort of on trend to go below the 40 micrograms per meter cube objective. So I think, that is really, really good news. Now, you've also got raw data there in tables. You can actually see by month, and being the nerd I am, I actually looked at each one and applied the bias to those to see how many months, which months have gone up and down. And then I had a chat with Alex Bullitt, who's our lead, and she said, well, that's a bit too simplistic an approach. And I spent an hour with her, and she explained it all to me. So it is really, really complex. It depends on the weather. It depends on anything and everything. And so I think we have to accept we are where we are with this. It's very, very complex. And the quality of this report is being presented in a very readable and understandable form. I don't know if the chair would actually allow this, but I think it'd be wonderful if we could get Simon to comment on the DEFRA project, where there are 15 additional monitors being purchased, and just to, I know it's taking, but it's so important because it's actually in this particular area, and the public audience we've got here now, I think they would be really interested to find out a little bit more about that project, how it may not do exactly what we'd love it to do, but it will actually, it's taking us nearer to the sorts of information that we really want.
Thank you. Else was there Councillor Morse?
If you could feed back to Alex that I think this is a great report, and actually I'm not a data nerd like my co-councillor next to me, but I find it really easy to read and understand what's in this report. And when it was first brought to me when I used to be a chair of scrutiny, it used to be one of the worst points of the year, I think, because it was just technical data, and it's turned into something that is really readable and understandable and becomes more than just a load of spreadsheets, which I think is how it used to feel a little bit to me. Obviously, I've been doing it a bit longer, so maybe I just understand it a bit better now. I have the great privilege of living on a very busy road, and the very busy road at the end of my very, very short drive is what DT44. So every year this is the highlight of my year because I get to find out how much pollution is outside my house. What I find really interesting is actually the levels are at a similar level now as they were to during COVID. Went up a bit last year, but it's gone back down, which is really interesting because my perception would be I live on a busier road than I did during the COVID years, and definitely more so than I did last year or the year before, because we're all a year out. So I suppose this is the danger with data and too much data is on its own, it doesn't. I know the levels have gone down, but I don't know if car levels have gone up because it's only data what I'm telling you. I don't know whether there are more electric cars driving up my road or less electric cars or less lorries. So I think this is a brilliant report. I think we've done exactly what we need to do legally. Whether the data on its own means that much to me is the question, but I think that's more of an observation than a question to you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other councillors' contribution? Councillor Fowle, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I think quite rightly, a lot of time's already been devoted to this subject tonight. So I'd like to highlight 3 areas. I think firstly that the council has now achieved 4 years compliance with the 1 hour NO2 air quality objective. I think it's a huge positive. And the monitoring that we've done across something like 84 to 90 sites has shown a reduction from dozens of hotspots to just 1 area of exceedance. That overall points toward a huge improvement in recent years in air quality. I guess I would like to say to the members of the public as well, though, that there's a wealth of information obviously available to ECC, to DCC, and nationally through DEFRA. It's up to us to use that as effectively as possible to tackle where there are hotspots. But I would recommend this report to you, Chair.
Thank you. Simon, are you in a position to answer a couple of those remarks or questions?
Absolutely, Chair. So going to Councillor Moore's point, as an automatic, when next year we have to review the air quality action plan and refresh it along with the air quality management area. So yes, there will be a complete refresh of the current plan and potentially, depending on members' sort of decision on, that may lead to a review of the air quality management area. With respect to the point that Councillor Jobson made on dates, we have to submit the data by June. It's quite an ordeal in pulling all the information together. It's submitted and we have to consult with various people locally, such as the Director of Public Health. We have to get to read it, and I personally pull a few favours in to get the personal review on that. So whilst we could, what we have historically done for the sake of transparency, and we were lucky today because it came on today, is that we put it for the autumn with the hope that you've got the government commentary on it as well, so that we're presenting it all together. So whilst we could come earlier when we submit the information to DEFRA, it would be without the independent analysis and an appraisal that you have before you today. In terms of the DEFRA project, I would draw people to Appendix A of the report. So this was something that we put a bid into DEFRA in September 2022, and it's not connected to low traffic neighbourhoods at all. It was just something we were looking to do in partnership with an organisation that were looking to develop some new technology in the field and try and change behaviour and improve information. And we only found out we were successful in April, and obviously we've been subsequently putting that project together, and there's a lot of a lot of things that we have been working on over the last 6 months to sort of get the project off the ground once we've got that funding and all the agreements to do. So what the project is looking to do is look at alternative methodologies, focusing on the development of virtual sensors trained by a few real world sensors, which would learn to predict the levels of pollutants within a traffic corridor. And what it would do is using artificial intelligence to look at both historic and near real-time inputs, which would allow the sort of virtual sensors to display an estimate of sort of daily pollution concentrations. And it is a bit experimental, and there's a lot of things that we've got to work through. But you know what the project's looking to do is then see if it can build a robust data set, which create an algorithm to be able to do some of this prediction, and then sort of inform residents, etc., in a more dynamic way. So it's quite an exciting project. There's a lot of things I'm learning, because I'm not necessarily an IT geek. I'm more of a scientist, but yeah, it's something we're now going to be working on for the next 18 months, 2 years, and will be part of our future reports back with our air quality stuff to inform people on what's happening. There will be information as time goes by. There will be a web pages set up when we get to that stage where we're doing stuff to be able to inform, and people will be able to see for themselves in due course. But that's something we're currently in the process of looking at the moment.
So thank you, Simon. I think that demonstrates that there's a lot of work going on and understanding of the serious problem that we are on, what we can deal with and what we can't deal with. And I hope, and allowed it to go on a bit, that the few members of the public who hung on until this last report, because they had showed an interest in it, can help and follow a little bit of it. I hope you understand it. And in general, I hope you understanding the work of the council in which we've done this tonight, because you may have thought it's a long meeting, but these are the things we have to deal with on the behalf of residents in Exeter. So I'll move the motion from the recommendations from the chair, and I'll ask Bob Fold, Councillor Fold, to second.
Second.
All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much. It's been a long meeting, everybody, but a lot of important decisions made. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, yeah.